to Word on Wednesday. It's an opportunity to revisit some of the things we looked at Gather Worship on Sunday. Now, this is the first Word on Wednesday of the new year, so can I take this opportunity to wish you a happy and a blessed new year. A blessed new year, a year where God is active in your life. Well, we kicked off our January series. It's a kind of series that sets the tone for the whole year, really. It's the theme is loving God and loving people. And it comes from Matthew 22, where Jesus responds to a question by a teacher of the law. And the teacher of the law says, which is the greatest commandment? And he says, it's to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. That's the key one. And the second one is like it, to love your neighbour as yourself. And Jesus says, all the law and the prophets hang together on those two things. And that's where they're the key for us as we go through this year, the umbrella themes, if you like, under which all the other things will fit. And they've arisen out of our seeking God, our exploring the future mornings that we had earlier last year. Loving God, loving people. Now, it was really a great blessing to have two baptisms on Sunday. And it was particularly poignant. Why? Because when the people shared about how they come to this point of being baptized, neither were new believers. So they've been walking this journey of faith a little while. And so they shared about how they got to that point, and it was a point of obedience. It was the next step in their journey of faith in their relationship with God. They wanted to be baptized as an act of obedience. Why did that fit well on Sunday? Well, you see, Jesus talks about obedience and love going together, one being a sign of the other. And that's what these guys were expressing. Baptism was a sign of obedience. Obedience is a sign of love. Their love for God, they were expressing it through an act of obedience, through an act of baptism. So Jesus talks about this very plainly in John 14. I think he kind of mentions this idea of loving and obeying about 4 times in 8 verses. If you love me, you'll obey my teaching. The one who obeys my teaching, he's the one who loves me, he says. To love is to obey, and to obey is to love. Why is that the case? Well, obedience is about choosing to suit God, to please God, rather than to suit or please ourselves. It is to choose to walk in his way, in his will, to do what he considers good and right, rather than what is expedient for us. And that doesn't just happen. We need to choose to do that. The love that Jesus talks about is an act of the will. I will obey your way, Lord, your will, Lord. I will choose to fulfill your purposes, not just my own. To love is to obey is to love. It's a key one, isn't it? It's a key one that we will wrestle with all the journey, all the way along our journey of faith. It will never leave us. Do we choose to suit ourselves? Do we choose to suit and please God? It will never leave us. In the big and the small, it will always be there. But it's key. And so it's really appropriate that baptism kind of led us into that, looking at that place of obedience as an expression of love for God, loving people. And we ended with a question, what might that mean for us? What might it mean for us as individuals to love God, to obey God in these coming days? What about issues of career and family, relationship maybe, finance? What does it mean to obey God? What does it mean to choose his way over our way in these things? And to do that, not to tick boxes, not out of a sense of duty, but out of an expression of love. What might it mean for us as a fellowship to love God through obedience? and to obey as an act of love. It's a biggie, and it will never leave us. You can see why Jesus said, everything else kind of hangs on these two things. Everything else, or these two things make sense of everything else. Loving God, loving people. What does it mean to obey as an act of love? So I don't know where you've got with that, but it'll keep revisiting, and it will involve a choice each time. Will I choose to obey? Will I choose to please him or please myself? It's an expression of love. That's what Jesus says. It's a biggie. But it's a great way to start our year with two testimonies, two baptisms, two signs of how people have got to that place of obedience as an expression of love. Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and may God bless you. Not just today, but in the days to come, in this year. It promises to be significant and exciting for us as a community of God's people. God bless you. Amen.